there's a problem of solution fitting, right? So I think, let me just go back here. What you see is that because it is, let's say, a solution-driven type of exercise, and there is a skills gap at city administrations, which is widening, talent goes to companies. The smart cities tend to relent to convenience technologies, like stuff, a smoother ride, a better bin, whatever, like stuff you can just easily procure. There is also, if you look at just the notion of business models and kind of how they operate, and not to talk about the difficulty of procurement and all that stuff, but the fact that you have to kind of catch value in transactions along the way is a bottleneck to scaling very rapidly, right? Because you need to, kind of chase this, put the service infrastructure, at least for the transactions, in place to do that. There's also, of course, risk-related friction, which I kind of coined as short as I can, but it's a bit of a beast. But it's also the main reason why the open data movement, and then the linked data movement, and the IoT and real-time data movement, and digital twins, data space, all that stuff, why it goes slowly, from my kind of experience working with the demand side is, it's easy enough to kind of have trust around the table, but what matters also is, who's at the table of the people at your table, right? So they're simply not good. There aren't any really good accepted, adopted universal models for local administrations. I think for national and supranational levels, those exist. There's treaties and all that stuff. But the translation to the field where actually the solutions need to happen they don't permeate or aren't implemented. Then there is also just what I call kind of the long tail problem, mainly on two dimensions. One is just GDP, essentially wealth. As you go down the long tail there, just if there's no money to procure a service and so forth, it's hard to fix the problem. But the scale of localities and local governments and regional governments also matters greatly. You could see that with COVID, for example, that in larger cities, although the incidence rate was higher, the health services were just a lot better. And it shouldn't matter, right? Ultimately, what we try to do is address human needs and contribute to a better society now and in the future. So stuff is going wrong on many fronts, and we don't seem to be getting in front of it. So the first thing we kind of worked on with, and it's a sizable kind of multi-ecosystem, if I call that, group, very international, where we kind of like started figuring things out. And we developed this model of post-competitive value engineering. So I come from, IMICE, then IMEC, which has a quite known nanotech pre-competitive platform. So essentially, the money is too big. So competitors come together, they pool resources, IP gets made, then they productize and go and compete in normal market conditions. But it's clear that some problems are too big. We're not able to handle them. So that's where a post-competitive platform kicks in. It elicits IP from competitive environments, and then creates a commons around it, because the idea is to open source it, make it accessible, which is, in theory, highly scalable, right, with the right incentives. And then you build a digital disruption infrastructure based on that, because the opportunity that's here today is that a lot of the digital transformation simply hasn't happened yet, right? So you can actually come in like a wizard, throw digital superpowers at all kinds of domains, and just have these massive economic gains simply through that. And then you combine that with the scalability of kind of the commons and open data and things like that. And it's not to say magic, but when I talk to less technically inclined, it is magic, right, in a sense. And I'll actually show some stuff later. So the idea then is that you actually supplant individual kind of business models with opportunity and another business model, a better business model, that simply by outcompeting, not by regulation and so forth, you come up with a better model, a cooperative model, and the ones who see it, spot it, and go with it, they'll get the benefit, and you basically turn the tanker, right? People always talk about turning the tanker, and then they look for the torpedoes, right? You turn a tanker through opportunity and incentives, and that's how we approach it. Futurecraft is the first kind of instance of such a platform. It operates broadly in the construction domain. I won't spend too much, but it's almost 3 years in the making. So the first thing I did when I quit the position I had was I met so many interesting people, but you never have time to actually engage. So I just went in and I engaged with all these different ecosystems, like the people really handling the migration crisis in Lampedusa, and all kinds of stakeholders there. Then climate was mainly linked to the Albach Forum. I worked, actually still work directly with the high-level roundtable of New European Bauhaus. So stuff has moved already quite a lot. Now, I've raised quote unquote quite a lot of public funding in my life, right? For this, I said I'm not going to do that. I could, because it's super societal. It's also social impact and so forth. It's up until a while ago completely founder funded. So we put well over $1 million into this. As soon as we saw, okay, there's this business model. I'll talk about that concretely in a second. For the project, we ran a pilot. There's a video. I don't know if there's time. Maybe all the way at the end after discussion, I can show it. I don't want to interrupt now the flow. But essentially, I'll try to be as brief as I can. We had a methodology where we kind of mapped Maslow to UN SDG impact objectives, used that then under a conceptual model, semantic model, if you want to call it, mapped that to existing research and products, and kind of elicited from that viable solutions that through the use of digital technologies could potentially change the way stuff is built, because we had identified in terms of wicked problems. Climate obviously is a very urgent one, and the built environment is the target number one. Ultimately, the pilot site was full of trees. We built a house there. Obviously, the research showed nature-based materials, so it's fully in wood, but we didn't cut down any trees. The human architects couldn't solve this, so we actually scanned the whole thing with LiDAR from the drone, from the statically on the ground, send that to after-hours researchers at, it's very flexible if you do founder-funded. Researchers at ETH Zurich, who then ran kind of a neural network, and that gave shape logics, and then the architect went to work with that. So essentially, the structure we did is designed by AI. Before it was cool. Now, out of all of that, there was one thing that was really important to me, because this was an exercise in value engineering, right? Is the price of what we did had to be at least €1 cheaper than the traditional way of doing construction. Because if it's €1 more, you need to spend 1,000 to explain why, right? And a price that's just lower, it speaks for itself, because people will find the incentive to use that. Like if there's no traps and red flags and this and that, they'll use the cheaper option. For 9 months, I actually lived on the pilot site. Well, worked there. I went home to sleep. So with the Starlink and the generator, all that stuff out of a tent. And there, I couldn't get a price under it. But from the start, because I said, I want to open source everything anyway, I had everybody and their grandmother sign Creative Commons clauses to all the contracts, including, the architect, the kitchen builder, everybody. And I said, but hang on, if the next person who would build the exact copy of this house would just use that, they wouldn't need to pay that cost that I had, of all the engineering and that stuff. And that would drop it below. So I called KPMG Global, and I said, I have two questions. I said, one, can I certify constructive wood as, sequestered carbon? And the answer came back quickly, yes. I said, okay, now, can I, at the digital stage, so the design stage of the process, retain the rights to certify the carbon of a physical object built using that digital design? That took a longer time, but it came back positive. So I said, okay, we have a business model. I called investors and so forth, and the rest we built. So we've started the foundation. We're incorporating Q1 the company to do transactions and all that stuff, and actually the context brokering the data platform. We assumed a starting point of 50 cities and regions. That's our market entry, B2G, because the larger B2B or commercial players, they serve that segment. So if we can kind of take a significant share of that, they'll be adapting to that, and from there you can kind of address the longer tail. And then at the end we do B2C, and the only way to make that work is with satellite data, where actually we infer the design used by pixel monitoring locations. Because somebody, we want it to really just be open, free, usable. Every design is configurable, extensible, forkable like software. Essentially what we're doing is applying, at the root, a lot of software industry principles to the construction sector. I'd be keen to talk to the construction data space people maybe somewhere later as well. So the 50 cities actually pre-launch, we're now at almost 2,000 engaged cities worldwide. I'm not going to divulge anything on who, because we really still need to launch first. We actually have one country. We've been focusing on the highest urban growth areas of the world, which is not Europe, right? So we have a lot of traction in Southeast Asia, and Africa we have already been working with for the requirements building and so forth. So it's really a global thing. Now, how does it work? In a nutshell, I kind of already explained it. So this is kind of your construction flow from design to then construction and operating the building. I'll try to kind of just, not spend too much time on the obvious. Now, so the IP builder, the designer, the architect, or the contributor to designs, they volunteer, let's say, the design onto the platform. It gets converted so that it's extensible, configurable. You can do anything with it, right? Forkable, so there is an engine somewhere, not even depicted in this one. There's a more complex slide. I call it the spaghetti monster. I was trying to avoid it, but it's hard to do in this context. But essentially, it gets converted so that it becomes extensible. Now, the IP gets managed proportionally, so there is an accounting of, oh yeah, that's a spaghetti monster. I'll wait with that so I don't chase you away. It's really, if we really need to, we can dive into that. Then, the actual designing happens in a context-sensitive way. In the pilot, we did that we don't start with the AI capability. The MVP looks slightly different. We have a procurement platform, so basically all the procurement data, opportunities and things like that from the entire world get fed into that and then presented. So the next year is actually focused on partnerships, because construction is the most hyper-local industry of all the mega sectors, partly because it's lugging around heavy stuff, right? But if you look at the slow rate of innovation, right, it's not because it's chock is full of talented engineers. So why is it, right? And part of it is the hyperlocality and the way it's structured, right? You have big players and then lots of subcontractors. So the knowledge flows are very different. And there are no like hyperscalers in construction. You have global niche players, right? I mean, that actually do the construction. There's like Arup and you know these types of parties. But like there's like the global stadium builders, there's the skyscraper builders, things like that. But there's no Facebook or Google in construction. So
You need
yeah.
to give us a little bit of time. To
Yes,
talk,
yes.
otherwise.
I will just finish that, and then we can dive into it. So when the house gets built, then the revenue from the carbon certification, we use in the business plan about 3K per dwelling. The reality will be closer to 5, but it's good to have some room because of the exchange, the price. We assume a 40% COGS, and in that COGS is also the rev share with you know the IP holders and so forth. So 60% of the revenue is used to fund the entire program towards the cities and so forth. So today we have you know all these cities joining the initiative. So that's what the foundation does. It's called the Digital Housing Commons, hashtag End the Stone Age. We also have kind of to mitigate some of the pain in the business model, because you deliver a service at A and B and get paid all the way after the alphabet ends, right? And then some. So to mitigate that, we've been elbowing our way into kind of existing projects in various stages of permitting, mainly in Europe, in talks with other sectors as well, about 120,000 square meters. Voilà, so that's in a nutshell what we do. We're open sourcing construction worldwide to create sustainable buildings much cheaper than is currently possible by being open sourced. Voilà. And that's the spaghetti monster, which is I actually present this to Jaap Gordijn, who I worked with in the past, but yeah, he didn't agree with my semiotics of the model. Thanks.
So, as far as I understand, your financing comes from credit cards.
In the yeah. We
So
actually.
How do you do it in Asia?
What do you mean?
The Asian countries are financing carbon.
No. So it's not a subsidy model, just to be clear. So you have industry; they need to offset the excess carbon that they generate, right? So they need to buy credits, and so all the wood that we place, or they can use to offset. Voila, it's very simple.
As far as I know, but maybe I'm completely wrong. It's a European way of doing for.
No, you can certify any certifiable. So it doesn't have to be in Europe, right? There's also.
So we pay for.
No, it's not. It's not about. It's really about mass. Like you know, we have to. So essentially, that part of the process, we work with KPMG on that, and the KPMG Origins platform. But essentially, the wood you place is used to offset excess carbon, and that's the.
But that's the mechanism.
Yeah.
I got a question.
I mean.
Are you using smart contracting for those kinds of voucher to offset the carbon footprint?
At the moment, no. Let's say the carbon certification engine, there's two things. So you have the KPMG Origin system, which has this kind of ledger-based stuff in it, and then we have a Canadian technology company that's mainly focused on, let's say, cladding and HVAC and these types of things, but it's very suited, let's say, or fitted to the domain. So the exercise now is to, once I'm just really focused on the incorporation now, is to get those kind of to finalize the thing. What we have today already is a configurator, which does the carbon calculation, but it's almost theory, right? Because it just, it measures.
It's a complex market.
Yeah, and I kind of like, because it's systemic innovation. It's a global thing, and you have to do it globally because it doesn't make sense. And basically what I've done is I've hooked into stuff that's already there, right? I mean, there's really no point. So I talked to KPMG. I said, okay, what part of the thinking you do? They introduced me to the guys who, Australia uses it. So I just work with that, and I need to deconcern myself also from all the technical aspect. For the context broker, we work actually with, not developers at Red Hat, let's say, who do their implementation there, but also the broader fireware ecosystem. On the GIS platform, I mean, I have good contacts, let's say, with the main GIS company in the world. This is part of the Red Hat guys. Satellite data currently with Latitudo 40, but then through one of the investors, there's also a South American entity that might be suited. So I'm now interfacing for the first time, let's say formally, with Gaia-X because, well, when I looked at Gaia-X a few years back, I saw a lot of theory and a lot of for me, I really like when things are a little bit more along the way, so that it's easier to look where value has landed and how things shape up. So the way I've kind of assumed, and I think quite correctly, things would develop is that gravity would be with Gaia-X, and that there would be a clear link to kind of fireware technologies and the data models we all know and love and so forth.
Can you say that you can use the market of fireware, which is around 400 towns worldwide, to begin to test your story?
Yeah, but I have cities. It's I have 2,000 today. We haven't even launched yet. Just to be clear, yeah.
No, but I mean, how do you have them? Have they committed to you?
We have different stages in the funnel. They are engaged, which means they have said yes once we launch. So we launch with the declaration to hashtag in the Stone Age. If you go to digitalhousingcommons.org, it's kind of listed what it's about and so forth. So those are cities that have said, yes, we will go. But it's in varying degrees of firmness. We have signatures, we have a minister of a country saying, yes, let's now roll out this pervasive program and so forth. Because don't forget, the problem I'm solving is really at the core of what cities everywhere are struggling with. The three main things today is climate change mitigation, affordable housing, massive problem everywhere, and digital transformation. And actually, I prefer to call digital transformation ethics by design, because essentially in the public domain, that's what it is. You're hard coding, quote unquote, human behavior into software to either improve the service or lower costs. But if you see what cities are today grappling with, it's precisely that. So it's broader than just the market. It's really about the fiber of how we run and govern society.
I totally don't understand the economics behind this.
You totally don't? Yeah? Okay.
I'm an architect.
Yeah?
And I draw, I don't know what, 20 houses in a year, family houses. That's my job.
Yeah.
I earn 7% of typically
Yeah.
the value of the house. That's my business. I'm an architect.
Yeah, I know.
Why the heck should I give my drawings, let the rights and open source so that everyone can just copy me and then my revenue is down?
No. So just to be clear, so that's not how it works. And we already have architects on board.
So I don't understand the economy for them.
What's that?
In it for them.
Yeah, I'm answering your question. Yeah. So we have architects already contributing to designs today. We are also working with the EAE to kind of develop this into a program. The point of this is that the function and role that an architect has in a lot of cases is repetitive, and I think it's something that plagues a little bit the industry or that side of the industry. I'm trying to just away with my words. So yes, indeed, it's correct that the part that you usually pay for that is we negate that, but the revenue that comes from the carbon income, that is shared with the IP holders, being the architect.
It sounds like that is much less than my current income.
But it's actually much more. Because how many houses do you do a year? 20 times 7%. I won't make your accounts, right? This introduces web virality, scaling, web economics essentially to that domain. So if you have a design which is on our platform and it gets used 1,000 times, you get paid 1,000 times for it, right?
IP.
So,
For the IP, for instance.
of course, yeah. So just to be clear, like I've discussed this with architects. It's not like we're trying to now swindle our way into it. So for me, the best forum to do that with was New European Bauhaus Roundtable. It has a number of representatives, if you want to call them that. And kind of this is, I think, an important way on how to transform the domain is the role of the architect. And if you look at the IP provisions for an architect, it's beautiful actually, the model, it's great. It has a lot of protections and so forth, but it's underutilized because not often do you do the same or distribute the same design again. So it's hyper protected, but that protection is not really being leveraged as it could.
But in any case, I mean, it's not the workflow because the drawing is not the property of the architect. The drawing is the property of the owner.
Yeah, but he does not have the right to.
I mean the IP holder. I mean the.
Reuse in any case. So I think that I mean, okay, we have to take care about the workflow we have here because I mean.
Well, just to be clear.
One way to have the discussion we have at the beginning.
I am in the same position. I really don't understand the economy of the system, but maybe I am too.
No, I mean I'm happy to take you into a deep dive of the whole business. But I mean
I don't see who pays.
So
I saw in that story who pays.
So ultimately, we make our money purely, chiefly on the impact we make. So essentially, the carbon we sequester gets transacted as
So you are
credits.
paid by avoiding negative externalities.
Not avoiding,
No, but this is what it is.
Okay, yeah, maybe the lingo, I'm sorry.
Economists will say like that, okay?
Yeah.
And then,
Okay.
if you have done that, you need to go to someone, and the carbon equivalent can be one of those, and you go to towns and you tell them, I have stopped that kind of that negative externality, and this is a number of cases, please pay me as a common good of the town for avoiding these externalities. Is it your model? Because I understand that model.
Well, so basically the way I've discussed it with KPMG so far, and I have to admit, is that
No, KPMG is not an authority for us, okay?
Okay. But I'm happy, like I'm happy to dive into where you think the issue is, but essentially the carbon you sequester, somebody needs to offset carbon, right?
No, that is
So
one
you can,
example.
yeah.
But you go much further.
So you have industry, they have excess carbon, and they need to buy offsets, right?
We don't have any worldwide market carbon. We have an European one.
D'abord, let's take another example, which is very, very difficult right now in France, which is what we call artificialization of soil. Okay, so it is not carbon. It is simply that if you do too much of artificialization of soil, you have what has happened in Valence, okay, in Spain. Now the question is, if you can show that the way you are designing houses, you are limiting the artificialization of soil, I understand this is something which is avoiding negative externality that you can compensate by someone else. Because at this point in France, for instance, no one has the right to do artificialization of soil. It doesn't work like that because you need to have balance, okay? And it is left in the end of the town hall to decide, the mayor to decide what he wants, what he does not want. So if you are simply economically explaining that mechanism, I understand the model. Do you want to hear?
Yeah.
Who will be the client? It will be municipalities, people.
Well, yeah. Currently, what we're doing is we are, amassing volume with municipalities, and then 2025 is dedicated to building up the procurement platform. So
Then there will be the mayor, the municipality that will pay you.
yeah, in that case, but essentially what we let's say try to do is limit our income to two things in that scenario. One is the carbon that is stored, and the other is the use of the platform, only based or only.
The carbon that is stored, who will pay
But in any case,
for that?
in any case, the question is, because we are here in Gaia-X, the question is where you need to have a data processing.
Yeah, so
So it's not part of the business model of Gaia-X, the data.
so let me just point out in the spaghetti model where the
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot understand what Hubert is saying, but it's not the purpose, because the purpose is outside Gaia-X. The purpose is how to be able to win and to save any element in terms of waterproofing or carbon. But it's due to data processing. It's not due simply to the question of.
No. It is due to really avoiding a negative situation. What
No,
you
Yeah,
are
the-
doing.
I mean-
The wicked problems is a very nice way to talk about negative externalities. Okay, this is
Yeah.
for me the
Mm.
same thing. Now there is a long part of economy which is dealing with that.
Yeah.
And if I was you, I will poach into that because you will find real answer with real mechanism. I mean, this is what we can bring to you. Okay? You are
Yeah,
coming
I'd love to. Yeah.
with a great futuristic project, and we are telling you, KPMG is a nice company, but if you want to be understood by economists,
Yeah.
you need to use their words.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and their
Yeah.
words, they are like that.
And not only economists, just people.
Well,
Because you
yes.
are paid by two sides, meaning municipalities pay you to build the houses, right?
Well, just to be clear, we don't have a stake in who builds what where. So what we do is we organize and we provide the IP of what gets built.
Yeah.